This is the median price of a new home in America today. 74.9% of households can't afford it. But here's what's really disturbing.
The reason why you can't afford to buy a home in 2025 and you're still living at your parents' house is because you drink Starbucks, you have a cell phone, you have a Netflix subscription, and you buy clothes. Apparently, this is the reason why. And it has nothing to do with the fact that home prices have gone up 60% in the last 5 years. And let's not forget that the average rent in the United States is at least $2,000. No, it's a cell phone and Starbucks. I agree with people to some extent that if you want to buy a house in 2025, you need to cut back on spending and make some sacrifices. But if giving up Starbucks was the answer, no one would be drinking it.
A 24-year-old in 1990 had a 40% chance of owning their home. A 24-year-old today? 27.8%. This isn't just about housing. It's about an entire generation being systematically priced out of the American dream. And what I discovered while investigating this story will change how you see everything. Since 2019, home prices have increased 60%. Rents have climbed 28.7%. Wages, just 22.5%. The average first-time homebuyer is now 38 years old. Think about that. 38. Young adults are delaying marriage, delaying starting families, living with roommates into their 30s. Not by choice, by economic necessity. 22.6 million renters now spend more than 30% of their income on housing. That's half of all renters in America. But this wasn't an accident. This was engineered. Let me show you something that will blow your mind. In 1910, American cities began passing laws that would quietly destroy housing affordability for the next century. Single-family zoning. These laws made it illegal to build apartments, duplexes, or any affordable housing in most neighborhoods. The result? In San Jose, these zoning laws add over $400,000 to the cost of every house. In Los Angeles, New York, and Seattle, $200,000. Cities literally made affordable housing illegal. But that's just the beginning. In 2008, the housing market collapsed. While regular families lost their homes, something else was happening. Wall Street saw opportunity. Blackstone began buying thousands of foreclosed homes, not to live in, to rent back to the people they just displaced. By 2021, firms like Blackstone owned 400,000 single-family homes. They created something called rent-back securities. Basically, they could buy your neighborhood using the money you'd pay in future rent. Wall Street wasn't just investing in housing anymore. They were competing with you for housing. And they had unlimited money. But the real architect of today's housing crisis was Ronald Reagan. In his first year, he cut public housing funding in half. He eliminated programs that built affordable housing. In 1970, there were 300,000 more affordable units than families who needed them. By 1985, there was a shortage of 3.3 million units. Reagan's solution? Tell people the homeless were homeless by choice. This wasn't incompetence. This was ideology. They believed the market would solve housing. Instead, they created a market that makes housing unsolvable. Here's what this actually means for real people. Sarah, 28, lives in Boston. She makes $75,000 a year. That should be enough, right? Her rent takes 60% of her income. She has $200 left each month after basic expenses. Homeownership? The bank says she'd need to make $94,000 just to qualify for a mortgage on an average home. She can't save for a down payment because all her money goes to rent. She can't buy a house because she can't save. She can't move somewhere cheaper because that's where her job is. This is the trap. And it's not just Sarah. Millions of young Americans are postponing the fundamental milestones of adulthood because they can't afford a place to live. The average age of first-time home buyers keeps climbing. We're watching an entire generation's future get delayed indefinitely.
Young people just don't want to work. They don't want to work hard, and that's why so many young people can't afford to buy a home. Do you know how annoying it is for me to hear that as a realtor? Let's be very clear. A lot of our grandparents and our great-grandparents and Gen X and baby boomers, they bought their homes for 13 blueberries and a handshake. I was doing some research for a video I'm posting later, and somebody bought 80 acres of land in the mid-1800s for $100. That's like unfathomable to me. The average home in America today is going to cost you around $400,000. Are there cheaper homes? Yes. Are there more expensive homes? Yes. Duh. But the average American salary does not align proportionally with that home price. Meaning, a lot of people can't afford to buy a home. And a lot of people never will be able to.
But here's what I found most disturbing. This isn't just changing when people buy houses, it's changing who they become. When you can't afford stability, you can't plan for the future. When you can't plan for the future, you can't invest in relationships, careers, communities. Previous generations built wealth through home ownership. It was the primary way middle-class families accumulated assets. Today's young adults are locked out of that system entirely. They're not building wealth. They're paying someone else's mortgage.
Okay, I'm not trying to say y'all are lying about your mortgage payments, but I need some clarity. I'm gonna put some photos right here. I'm on the mortgage side of TikTok. I'm I guess on the wrong side because I can never afford this. Mortgage, $5,300. I'm gonna post all the pictures right here. Mortgage, $2,919. Mortgage, $5,073. I have to recheck. Hold on. I just went back and rewatched those videos. $5,000 for mortgage? Okay, people clap at me like, oh, you chose a camper. Heck yeah!
A $1,000 increase in median home price now prices out an additional 115,593 households. A quarter-point increase in mortgage rates? That's 1.1 million more families who can't afford to buy. The system has become so sensitive that tiny changes create massive human consequences. Gen Z homeownership, flat for 3 years. Millennial homeownership, stagnant. For the first time in American history, each generation is doing worse than their parents. What I realized while reporting this story is that this isn't a housing crisis. This is a wealth transfer, from young people to old people. From renters to landlords, from individuals to institutions. Every month, millions of young Americans hand over thousands of dollars to people who already own property. Money that could have gone to savings, to starting businesses, to raising families. Instead, it disappears into the portfolios of people who were lucky enough to buy before the system broke.
To buy a house in the United States. The average household income in the United States is $80,000 a year. And a financial advisor recommends that you spend only 25% of your after-tax income on your housing budget. Your after-tax income, if you make $80,000 a year, is $60,000. And if you were to take 25% of that on a monthly basis standpoint, your monthly mortgage payment should be no more than $1,250 per month. A $1,250 per month mortgage budget only affords you a $175,000 home. But the average home price here in America is $420,000. So the average household in America can only afford a $175,000 home, but the average home price is $420,000. That, simply put, is the entire issue that Americans are dealing with right now.
But it gets worse. Because young people can't buy homes, they're forced to rent. Because rental demand is so high, rents keep rising. Because rents keep rising, it becomes even harder to save for a down payment. This is a feedback loop that gets worse every month, and there's no market mechanism to fix it. The invisible hand isn't just invisible, it's actively working against an entire generation. Here's what haunts me about this story. We're not just talking about delayed homeownership, we're talking about delayed everything. Delayed marriages, delayed families, delayed communities. What happens to a society where an entire generation can't afford to participate in the basic rhythms of adult life? What happens when the fundamental promise of America, that if you work hard, you can build a life, becomes mathematically impossible for people under 30? That number I showed you at the beginning, $459,826, it's not just the median price of a home. It's the price of admission to the American dream. And for the first time in our history, most Americans can't afford the cover charge. The question isn't whether this will change. The question is what we become while we wait for it to.